What happened when you tried to cancel a dead person's gym membership? 3 weeks after burying my husband James, his gym was still charging his credit card and refused to cancel unless either he called them personally or I brought his death certificate in person to stop it. I explained I was staying with my mother 40 minutes away, but the manager said company policy required physical documentation for all death-related cancellations. I begrudgingly made the drive with the certificate, and he held it up to the light before shaking his head. This is just a photocopy. I need the original with the raised seal. I explained I only had 3 originals that were all in use for insurance and Social Security, but he pulled out a policy binder. There's also a $300 early termination fee since James signed our platinum commitment plan. I said my husband was literally dead from pancreatic cancer and couldn't finish his commitment, but he just shrugged. The contract is non-refundable regardless of circumstances, including death. I returned the next day with an original certificate, but then he said he wanted James's driver's license and the original contract. You didn't mention those yesterday, I said, trying my hardest to stay calm. He smiled. You didn't ask about the complete requirements. I explained the funeral home had kept his license, but he just turned to his computer. Then I can't process this without photo verification. I held up the obituary and funeral photos, but he wouldn't even glance at them. Corporate requires official photo ID. I almost screamed at him, but I needed to get back to my mom's to take care of the kids, so I walked out planning to deal with it later. The next charge hit not long after, and when I called, he said only James could authorize cancellation as the primary account holder. Frustrated, I made another 40-minute drive and slammed James's chemo port in the medical bag on his desk with the hospital label showing James's name. Is this enough proof he's dead? I shrieked. He picked it up with 2 fingers like garbage and dropped it back down. This just looks like used medical tubing. Honestly, if James was that sick, he should have canceled months ago instead of wasting everyone's time now. The port fell onto the floor as he continued. Besides, having cancer doesn't void the contract. He then said I was past the 30-day cancellation window and owed $1,800 in penalties. My whole body shook with rage when he looked at the chemo port on the floor and said, your husband came here dragging that thing around. It was disturbing for other members. Maybe if you'd spent less time at your mother's and more time taking care of him, he'd still be using his membership instead of leaving medical waste on my floor. The room went silent. I'm saying James was here with tubes hanging out trying to stay healthy and I never saw you once. So who really killed him? I couldn't breathe. An elderly man said, that's disgusting, but the manager smirked. Sir, this is a private conversation. I screamed, keep stealing from my dead husband because I'm done begging, as I walked out the door. I drove straight to the bank, and when the banker pulled up our account, she went pale. There's been $4,300 in gym charges since his death. The screen showed fake equipment fees and trainer sessions James never booked. He's been adding services? She nodded and printed 3 years of statements, highlighting charges after James's diagnosis. There was a platinum upgrade during chemo when he could barely walk, and in total there were $8,000 in fraudulent charges during his illness and after death. The banker sighed. We've had 7 other complaints about this gym. People just cancel their cards and give up. She suggested I file a complaint with the state attorney general's office, and that night I posted in local Facebook groups asking if anyone else had this problem. Within hours, I had messages from 14 people and discovered he'd stolen over $200,000 from terminally ill and deceased members. One widow said he'd charged her husband for a year after his death with fake training sessions. Another family found he had given their dead father's membership card to one of his own cousins while still charging the family. The worst was a mother whose son died in a car accident, and the manager switched his account to family elite status the day after the obituary ran. Armed with evidence and testimony from 14 victims, I returned the next morning with a detective and warrant ready to destroy him. The manager tried deleting his files, but the detective seized everything. I was following corporate policy, he screamed as they cuffed him, but the detective found his laptop with a spreadsheet titled Terminal Profits, tracking dying members from obituaries. He had notes like, pancreatic means 3 to 6 months of charges, and widow too depressed to check statements. The detective said, you were hunting dying people? The manager laughed. They're going to die anyway. Why shouldn't someone profit? My blood went cold when I saw he'd written about James. Chemo port visible. Jack up fees while he's too weak to notice. He got 25 years for fraud and elder abuse.